I thought my husband was just traveling for work. That's what he always said. Just clients. But then I saw the flower charges in towns he never mentioned. I asked, who are you sending these to? He just smiled. So I followed him. And when I saw him crying over a stranger's grave like he lost everything, the truth was a lot worse than an affair. I didn't confront Jeff when I first saw the charges. I sat at the kitchen counter in our house in Newton, staring at the bank app while he rinsed dishes behind me like nothing was wrong. The numbers didn't look dramatic. Small charges. $30 here. 40 there. Florists in towns he never talked about. Salem. Pittsfield. Places that didn't match the client meetings he always mentioned. At first, I told myself it was work. Sympathy arrangements. Something thoughtful. Something normal. But nothing showed up for me. No flowers. No explanation. Just more charges. When he came home that week, I asked him directly, "Are you sending flowers to someone?" He didn't panic. That was the first thing that felt wrong. He just paused for a second, then said, "Client stuff. One of my accounts had a family death." It was smooth. Too smooth. Like he'd already practiced it. I nodded, but it didn't sit right. After that, I started paying attention. His trips didn't match his clothes. He packed one dark blazer, black shoes, simple shirts. Not presentation clothes. Something more neutral. Something that didn't belong in conference rooms. He stopped giving details. Everything was confidential. Every location vague unless I pressed. Even then, he answered too quickly, like the answers were ready before the questions. And when he came home, sometimes he felt different. Quieter. Softer. Like he'd been somewhere heavy. One night, he hugged me from behind while I was brushing my teeth and didn't let go right away. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just tired." But his voice didn't sound tired. It sounded like he'd been crying earlier. I told my friend Kelly over coffee. She didn't sugarcoat it. "Amy, that sounds like an affair." "I know," I said. "I just don't know what kind yet." That was the truth. I wasn't in denial. I was trying to understand what I was dealing with before I blew everything up. The next trip made the decision for me. He said, North Shore. A few meetings near Salem. Might head west after. Salem. One of the charges. That was the moment everything lined up. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse him. I packed his bag, kissed him goodbye, and watched him drive off like I always did. Then I went back inside, waited a few minutes, and booked my own car. I told myself I just needed to see. Not confront. Not react. Just confirm. By the time I got to Salem, the sky was flat and gray. I went straight to the hotel he listed on his shared calendar and waited. When he pulled in, I almost backed out of the whole thing. He looked normal. Calm. Like any other business trip. Then he reached into the back seat and pulled out a bouquet of white lilies. He didn't go into the hotel. He got back in the car and drove away. I followed. He didn't drive toward offices or restaurants. He drove toward a cemetery. There were cars lined up outside. People dressed in black walking through the gates. A funeral. I parked down the street because my hands were shaking too much to pull in closer. Then I saw him. Jeff stepped out of his car holding the flowers. His posture had changed. His face had changed. He didn't look like a man going to work. He looked like a man going to grieve. I followed at a distance and stayed near the edge of the service. There was a small group gathered around a casket. Quiet. Controlled. Wealthy-looking family. And one woman standing near the front, holding herself together. She noticed him immediately. And he went straight to her. She took his hand like she'd done it before. Not formal. Not polite. Familiar. That was the first moment something inside me dropped. This wasn't random. This wasn't work. This was practiced. The service started. I barely heard any of it because I was watching him. When it was his turn, he stepped forward and spoke. About grief. About loss. About how people never really leave you. And then he cried. Not a polite tear. Not something restrained. He broke. His voice cracked. His shoulders shook. He covered his mouth like he couldn't hold it in. People around him reacted to it. They comforted him. They believed him. The woman beside him held onto his arm like he was the only person who understood her. That's when I knew. I wasn't watching an affair. I was watching a role. And he knew it well. After the burial, everyone moved to a reception nearby. I followed again, staying outside, watching through the windows. He sat next to her. Not across. Next to. She leaned into him. He held her like it was natural. At one point, he kissed the top of her head. That broke whatever doubt I had left. This wasn't new. This wasn't casual. This was something he had built. I waited outside until he stepped out alone. When he saw me, he froze. Not confused. Not surprised. Like he'd been expecting this eventually. I said his name. Jeff. He looked at me, then at the door behind him, then back at me. You weren't supposed to be here, he said. Not sorry. Not an explanation. Just that. I laughed once because I couldn't process it. Who is she? I asked. He didn't answer. Who are you to her? I said again. He lowered his voice. This isn't the place. No, I said. I think it is. He stepped closer, trying to contain it. Get in the car. I stared at him. This wasn't a man caught cheating. This was someone trying to manage two lives at the same time. And for some reason, he still thought I would cooperate. I should have walked into that reception and exposed everything. I didn't. I said, fine. Because I wanted the truth where he couldn't perform. We got into his rental car. The door shut. And for the first time, I was alone with my husband after watching him cry over someone who wasn't part of our life at all. And I already knew whatever he was about to say wasn't going to make this better. The car door shut, and for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Jeff kept both hands on the steering wheel like he needed something solid to hold onto. I watched him from the passenger seat, waiting for him to say something that made sense. He didn't. So I did. Start talking. He let out a slow breath. Not panicked. Not rushed. Just measured. I can explain, he said. That's not a start, I replied. That's what people say when they're about to lie. His jaw tightened slightly. I'm not lying. You already did, I said. For years. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders shifted, like something heavier had just settled on him. Another pause. Then he said, I'm not a consultant anymore. I didn't react right away. I just stared at him, letting the words sit there. How long? I asked. A few years. A few years. I leaned back slowly, staring at the windshield. So everything, all the trips, the meetings, all of that was fake? Not fake, he said quickly. Just different than what you thought. I turned my head and looked at him. Then say what it is. Another breath. Longer this time. I work with families, he said. During funerals. During loss. I waited. That's not a job, I said. It is, he replied. You just don't hear about it. Then explain it like I'm not supposed to understand, I said. He nodded once, like he'd already decided he was going to say this out loud. There are people, wealthy families mostly, who don't want grief to feel empty, he said. They hire people to be there. To fill space. To support. To make the loss feel real. That's what friends and family are for, I said. Not everyone has that, he said. Or not enough of it. I stared at him. So you go to funerals for strangers? Yes. And cry? Yes. And give speeches? If they ask. I let out a quiet breath through my nose. You fake grief for money. His head turned sharply. It's not fake. It is to me. I feel it, he said, more firmly now. I step into it. I make it real for them. That's acting, I said. No, he said. It's not about performance. It's about presence. I looked away from him again because something about the way he said that made my stomach turn. You stood there, I said slowly, and cried like you lost someone you loved. I did love them, he said. I snapped my head back toward him. You didn't even know them. I knew what they meant to someone else, he said. That's enough. For a second, I didn't know what to say. Because the way he said it, he believed it. This wasn't someone caught doing something wrong and scrambling for an excuse. This was someone explaining something he thought made sense. I shook my head. So all those trips, that's what you've been doing? Yes. And the flowers? They're part of it. Sometimes I bring them. Sometimes families ask me to. And you charge them for this? Yes. How much? He hesitated. That hesitation told me it was more than I expected. Jeff. It depends, he said. But enough to cover everything. Travel. Time. Support. Support, I repeated. He nodded. I let out a short, empty laugh. You're getting paid to pretend to care. I'm getting paid to help people who are grieving, he said. Those aren't the same thing. They are to me. Another silence filled the car. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest since the cemetery. The woman, I said. Who is she? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Amy. No, I said. You don't get to slow this down. Who is she to you? He looked straight ahead. Her name is Megan. Megan what? Megan Cole. And what are you to her? That was the question. That was the line. He didn't answer right away, and that told me everything I needed to know before he even spoke. She believes, he started, then stopped. I leaned closer. Say it. She believes I'm a widower. The air in the car felt like it disappeared. A widower, I repeated. Yes. So not just someone helping her, I said. Not just someone showing up to a funeral. No. You let her believe you lost someone too. He didn't argue. He didn't correct me. He just said, quietly, it helps her connect. I stared at him. You built a whole identity, I said. I told her what she needed to hear to feel understood. That's lying. It's not that simple. It is to me. He turned toward me slightly. You didn't see her today. You didn't see what she's dealing with. She needed someone who knew what that felt like. And you decided to be that person. Yes. Even now, he wasn't defensive. That's what made it worse. He wasn't trying to justify it in a desperate way. He was explaining it like it was reasonable. Like anyone in his position would do the same thing. I sat back in my seat, staring out the window. So what? I said quietly. You just show up, cry, hold her hand, and go home? He didn't answer. I turned back to him slowly. What else? Amy. What else, Jeff? Another pause. Then, I stay sometimes. Stay, I repeated. After, he said. To help. To help, I said again, the words starting to feel unreal. Yes. I shook my head slowly. You're not just going to funerals. No. You're not just comforting people. No. Then say what it is. He looked at me finally. And for the first time since we got into the car, I saw something close to fear. Not of me. Of what I was about to understand. She depends on me, he said. That wasn't an answer. That was a warning. And I felt something in my chest tighten, because whatever came next wasn't going to fit into anything I could still call normal. I didn't say anything right away. She depends on me. That's what he said. Like it explained something. Like it made what I saw back there acceptable. I stared at him, waiting for the rest. There's more, I said. He nodded once. There's always more. That almost made me laugh. Then say it, I said. All of it. No pauses. No careful wording. Just say it. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding this in for years. It didn't start like this, he said. I crossed my arms. It never does. A few years ago, I lost a major client, he continued. Everything after that started falling apart. I couldn't keep up with the work. The travel. The pressure. I was already behind, and I didn't want to tell you. So you lied. Yes. That part's clear. He looked down at his hands for a second, then back at the windshield. I went to a funeral, he said. I blinked. Whose? A former client's father. I wasn't even close to him. I just showed up because I thought it was the right thing to do. I stayed quiet. At the service, there was this woman, he continued. She didn't have anyone with her. No one sitting beside her. No one talking to her after. People came up, said the usual things, then moved on. And you didn't, I said. He shook his head. No. Of course you didn't. I sat with her, he said. I talked to her. I listened. That's it. Nothing else. And? She told me things she hadn't told anyone, he said. About her husband. About how empty the house felt. About how everyone expected her to move on too quickly. I watched him carefully. She needed someone to just stay there, he said. So I stayed. How long? A few hours. And then what? I asked. I left, he said. But she asked for my number. And you gave it to her. Yes. Why? He didn't hesitate. Because she needed someone. I looked at him for a long second. You're not a therapist. I know. You're not her friend. I know. You were a stranger at a funeral. I know. But you still stepped into that space anyway. Yes. There it was again. That certainty. Not guilt. Not regret. Certainty. What happened after that? I asked. We kept talking, he said. At first, just messages. Then calls. Then I went back to see her. I felt my stomach tighten. You went back. Yes. How many times? A few. And she still thought you were just, what? A guy who understood her grief. Yes. And you let that continue. Yes. I nodded slowly. Did you tell her about me? I asked. He didn't answer. That was enough. No, I said for him. No, he repeated. I looked away again, out the windshield, trying to keep my voice steady. So that's where it started, I said. One woman. One funeral. Yes. And then you realized you could turn it into something else. He shook his head. Not like that. Then how? It grew, he said. Word spreads. Families talk. People recommend you. Especially in certain circles. They don't want therapists. They don't want distance. They want someone who feels it with them. So you became that person. Yes. And you built a whole job out of it. Yes. I let that settle for a second. You quit consulting. I didn't quit, he said. I just stopped taking work. And you kept pretending. Yes. For years. Yes. I laughed under my breath. That's impressive. He didn't react to the sarcasm. What did you tell them? I asked. These families. The truth, he said. I looked at him sharply. Don't do that. What? Don't say the truth like this isn't built on lies. He held my gaze. I tell them I understand loss. You don't. I understand what it does to people. That's not the same thing. It is to them. I shook my head. You create a story. I give them something they need. You give them a version of you that doesn't exist. He didn't answer. Because that part was true. I leaned back again, trying to slow everything down. How many? I asked quietly. He frowned slightly. How many what? How many people have you done this with? Amy. No. Don't avoid it. How many? He hesitated. Not a number you're comfortable saying out loud, I said. It's not like that, he replied. It is exactly like that. Another pause. Then, more than a few. That was all he gave me. But it was enough. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't one bad decision that spiraled. This was a pattern. A system. A life he built carefully, one grieving person at a time. And Megan, I said. She's not just one of many, is she? His silence answered before he did. No, he said quietly. She's different. Of course she was. They're always different, I said. He ignored that. She needed more, he continued. More than just someone showing up. She needed consistency. Stability. And you gave that to her. Yes. At what point, I asked, did you decide to become a widower? He looked down again. It made things easier, he said. For who? For her. I shook my head slowly. No. For you. He didn't argue. Because if you're grieving too, I said, then everything you do makes sense. The calls. The visits. The way you act. The way you talk. He stayed quiet. You built a character, I said. I built a connection, he replied. That's not connection, I said. That's manipulation. He turned toward me again. You didn't see her today. And you think that justifies it? No, he said. I think it explains it. It doesn't. Another silence. Thicker this time. I felt it settling into something heavier than anger. Something slower. Understanding. Not acceptance. Just clarity. You didn't just lie to me, I said quietly. He didn't respond. You built entire lives, I continued. Multiple versions of yourself. And you kept them running at the same time. Yes. And you never thought that would fall apart. He looked straight ahead again. I thought I could manage it. That was the first honest thing he said. I studied his face. Not panic. Not regret. Just a man realizing something he controlled for years had finally slipped. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. Because there was still something he hadn't said. I could feel it sitting there, just out of reach. You're still not telling me everything, I said. He closed his eyes for a second. Then opened them. I know. That was when my chest tightened again. Because whatever came next was going to be worse than everything he'd already admitted. I didn't rush him this time. I know, he said. And for the first time since we got into the car, I felt something shift. Not control. Not calm. Something heavier. Then say it, I said quietly. He rubbed his hands together once, like he was trying to steady himself. It's not just Megan, he said. I let out a slow breath. I figured. There's someone else. Of course there is. He looked at me. Her name is Sarah. Sarah what? Sarah Long. I nodded once, like I was filing it away. Where? Pittsfield. The second town. The second set of charges. So you built the same life twice, I said. It's not the same, he said quickly. It is to me. It's different with her. They're always different, I said again. He didn't argue this time. How long? I asked. A little over 2 years. 2 years. I stared straight ahead, letting that settle. You were already doing this with Megan when you started with Sarah. Yes. So you were managing both at the same time. Yes. And they don't know about each other. No. And they don't know about me. No. Every answer came easier now. Like once he crossed the line, there was no reason to stop. I nodded slowly. And to Sarah, I said, you're what? He hesitated, just slightly. The same, he said. A widower. Yes. I let out a quiet breath that almost turned into a laugh. You didn't even change the story. It works, he said. I turned toward him. That's what you think this is? Something that works. It helps them connect, he said again. No, I said. It helps you control it. That hit him. Not enough to stop him, but enough to register. I leaned back, pressing my head against the seat. So let me get this straight, I said. You show up to funerals, you build trust, you create a story about yourself, and then you stay. Yes. You keep going back. Yes. You become part of their lives. Yes. And you do this with more than one person at the same time. Yes. There it was. Clear. Simple. Nothing hidden anymore. And they trust you, I said. Yes. They believe you. Yes. They depend on you. Yes. I turned my head slowly and looked at him. And you let that happen? I don't just let it happen, he said. I support it. That was the moment something in me went completely cold. You support it, I repeated. Yes. By lying to them. By being there. By replacing something real with something you made up. By giving them something they don't have. That's not yours to give, I said. He didn't answer. Because there was no way to answer that. The silence stretched again, but this time it didn't feel uncertain. It felt final. Then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. And what happens after? I said. He frowned slightly. After what? After the funeral. After the calls. After you become part of their life. He didn't answer. Jeff. Amy. No. You don't get to avoid this part. He stared at the dashboard. Then he said, it depends. On what? On what they need. I felt my hands tighten in my lap. And what do they need? I asked. He swallowed once. Someone who stays. That wasn't an answer. That was confirmation. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quieter now. You don't just visit them, I said. Do you? He didn't respond. You don't just sit with them and talk. Still nothing. You don't just hold their hand. His jaw tightened. That's what I thought, I said. He turned toward me, finally breaking. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. It's not transactional, he said. It's not what you think. I think you're sleeping with them. The words sat there between us. Heavy. Clear. Unavoidable. He didn't deny it. That was enough. I leaned back slowly, my chest tight but my voice steady. How many? I asked. Amy. How many, Jeff? He closed his eyes for a second. Not all of them, he said. That made it worse. Not all, I repeated. No. But some. Yes. I nodded once. Because that was the truth. Not hidden. Not softened. Just there. And Megan? I asked. Silence. And Sarah? I said. More silence. I didn't need him to say it. I already knew. I let out a slow breath and looked out the window. Cars passed. People walked by. Life kept moving like nothing had changed. But everything had. You built relationships, I said quietly. Not just roles. Yes. You made them believe you were safe. Yes. You made them believe you understood them. Yes. And then you became something permanent in their lives. He didn't answer this time. Because there was no way to make that sound like anything other than what it was. I turned back to him. And you think this is helping them? I know it is. No, I said. You need it to be helping them. He frowned. What does that mean? It means if it's not helping them, I said, then everything you've done is just taking advantage of people at their lowest. His expression tightened. That's not what this is, he said. That's exactly what it is. They come to me, he said. You make sure they do, I replied. Another silence. But this one felt different. Not uncertain. Not fragile. Settled. Like the truth had finally stopped moving. I studied his face again. Still calm. Still controlled. Still trying to hold on to something that made sense to him. And that's when I realized something that made all of it worse. He didn't think he was the villain in this. He thought he was necessary. And that meant he wasn't going to stop. You're still doing it, I said. He didn't answer. You're still seeing them, I continued. Another silence. You left our house this morning to come here, I said. To her. Yes. And after this, you would have gone to Pittsfield. A pause. Then yes. 2 lives. Same week. Same version of him, just adjusted enough to fit each one. I nodded slowly. Because now I understood the structure of it. The schedule. The system. The way he moved between them like it was normal. And for him, it was. I sat there for a few seconds, letting that settle. Then I asked the question I didn't think I was ready to hear the answer to. Do they know everything about you? I said. No. What do they know? What I tell them. And what do you tell them? He hesitated again. Longer this time. Then he said, quietly enough. That word stayed in the car long after he said it. Enough. Not everything. Not truth. Just enough. And that's when I realized something else. This wasn't just about deception. It was about control. Every word. Every detail. Every version of himself. Measured. Adjusted. Delivered exactly the way it needed to be. And I didn't know which version of him I had been living with. Maybe none of them were real. Maybe all of them were. I didn't know anymore. But I did know one thing. We weren't even at the worst part yet. Because there was still something he hadn't said. Something bigger than the lies. Bigger than the affairs. Something that made all of this not just betrayal, but permanent. Permanent, I said quietly. What did you do that made this permanent? Jeff didn't answer right away. He just sat there, hands still on the wheel, staring forward like he was deciding whether to finally cross a line he couldn't come back from. Jeff. His jaw tightened. You already told me everything else, I said. Don't stop now. I didn't stop, he said. Then say it. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. They have kids. For a second, I didn't understand what he meant. Kids, I repeated. What does that? And then it hit me. I felt it before I processed it. Like my chest dropped and my stomach twisted at the same time. No, I said immediately. No. He didn't speak. No, I said again louder. You don't get to say something like that and just sit there. What do you mean they have kids? He swallowed once. Megan has a daughter. The car felt smaller. How old? He hesitated. Jeff. 3. 3. I stared at him, trying to line that up with everything else he'd told me. The timeline. The years. The trips. 3. That's not possible, I said, even though I already knew it was. It is. I shook my head slowly. No, that's not. It is, he said again. My hands started to shake. And Sarah? I asked, even though I didn't want to. Another pause. 2, he said. 2. I let out a breath that didn't feel like it came from me. So you didn't just lie, I said. You didn't just build fake lives. I turned toward him fully now. You built families. He didn't correct me. He didn't soften it. He just sat there. Say it, I said. His voice was low when he finally spoke. They're mine. That was it. No long explanation. No attempt to ease into it. Just the truth. And somehow, that made it worse. I leaned back in my seat slowly, staring up at the ceiling of the car like it might steady me. 2 kids. 2 different towns. 2 different women who thought they knew him. And me. 15 years. All of it running at the same time. I let out a short, hollow laugh. I thought I was catching you in an affair, I said. That's what I was preparing for. He didn't respond. This isn't an affair, I continued. What is this? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't a word for it that didn't sound insane. I looked back at him. How? I asked. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? How did you manage this? I said. Logistically. Emotionally. How do you go from one life to another like this? I schedule it, he said. That answer made my stomach turn. You schedule it? Yes. Like meetings? Yes. I shook my head slowly. Salem. Pittsfield. Newton, I said. You just rotate between them. Yes. And you never thought this would collapse. I thought I could keep it separate. Separate, I repeated. 2 children. Separate. 2 women. Separate. A whole marriage. Separate. You're not separating anything, I said. You're just lying to everyone at the same time. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. I pressed my hands against my thighs, trying to ground myself. Do they know? I asked. No. They think you're theirs. Yes. They think you're a widower who found them. Yes. And the kids, I said slowly, they think you're their father. He nodded once. I am. That word hit harder than anything else. Not because it wasn't true. Because of how simply he said it. Like it was just another fact. I looked away again, out the window. A couple walked past the car, talking, laughing quietly. Completely normal. Completely unaware that inside this car, everything I thought I knew had just collapsed. How often do you see them? I asked. Megan, more recently, he said. Sarah, less, but regularly. Regularly, I repeated. Yes. And they think you're building a future with them. They don't ask questions like that, he said. That's not what I asked. He stayed quiet. They think you're staying, I said. Yes. I nodded slowly. Of course they do. Another silence. But now it felt different. Not tense. Not uncertain. Just heavy. Like everything had already fallen apart and we were just sitting in the middle of it. I turned back to him one more time. Why? I asked. Not accusing. Not yelling. Just asking. Why this? Why them? Why any of it? He took a long breath. They need someone, he said. I shook my head immediately. No. They do, he insisted. You saw Megan. You saw how she was. That's not the question, I cut in. He stopped. That's why you started, I said. I'm asking why you kept going. That was different. I could see it in his face. Because that didn't have a clean answer. I was already in it, he said finally. It didn't feel like something I could just stop. You could have told me. Yes. You could have walked away. Yes. You could have chosen one life. Another pause. I didn't want to give any of them up. There it was. The most honest thing he'd said. Not confusion. Not justification. Choice. I nodded slowly. Of course you didn't. Because in his mind, this wasn't destruction. This was something he built. Something he maintained. Something he believed mattered. And that's what made it so much worse. Because it meant he didn't regret it the way I needed him to. He regretted being caught. Not what he did. I sat there for a long time without speaking. Then I asked the last question I needed answered. Did you ever think about me? He didn't answer right away. I did, he said finally. When? When I was home. I let out a quiet breath. Only then. He didn't respond. That was enough. I nodded once, more to myself than to him. Because now everything made sense. Not in a way that fixed anything. Just in a way that closed the gaps. There were no more missing pieces. No more confusion. Just the full weight of it. 15 years. 2 other lives. 2 children. And a man who thought he could carry all of it at once. I reached for the door handle, then stopped. Not because I was hesitating. Because I realized something I hadn't said yet. You're not going to stop, I said. He didn't answer. You're going to keep seeing them, I continued. Keep going back. Keep being whoever they need you to be. Silence. That's your answer, I said. I opened the door. Stepped out into the cold air. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel confused. I felt clear. Because whatever came next wasn't about understanding him anymore. It was about deciding what I was going to do with the truth he just gave me. I didn't go back into that building. I didn't walk into the reception. I didn't confront Megan. I didn't expose him in front of people who had no idea what he really was. I got in my car and drove. I don't remember most of that drive back to Newton. I remember traffic lights. I remember gripping the wheel too tightly. I remember my phone lighting up once with his name and ignoring it. Everything else felt muted. Like my brain was protecting me from taking in too much at once. When I got home, the house looked exactly the same. That was the worst part. Shoes by the door. His jacket hanging where he left it. The coffee mug he used that morning still in the sink. Nothing had changed. Except everything had. I walked through each room slowly, like I was seeing it for the first time. The bedroom. The closet. His side of the dresser. I opened drawers without really knowing why. Not looking for proof anymore. Just confirming he was real. That this life had actually happened. 15 years. And I didn't know who he was. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it. Not screaming. Not crying like I thought I would. Just quiet. Heavy. Like something had been removed from inside me and left a space I didn't know how to fill. My phone buzzed again. Jeff. I let it ring. Then again. Then a message. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time before turning the phone face down. Because what was there left to say? He had already told me everything. And somehow, that made it harder. The next morning, I called the bank. Hi, this is Amy Carter, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to review all recent transactions on a joint account. The man on the line, John Smith, walked me through everything. Charges I had already seen. And others I hadn't noticed. Hotels. Gas. Restaurants. Small purchases that mapped out a life I was never part of. It wasn't chaotic. That's what made it worse. It was organized. Scheduled. Maintained. Like he had been managing 3 separate lives with the same level of care. I froze the account that day. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Later, I called a lawyer. Lisa Green. Boston. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Didn't react to the story the way people usually do when they hear something they can't process. She just said, do you want to stay, or do you want to leave? I answered immediately. I'm leaving. Then we move quickly, she said. And we did. Jeff came home that night. I heard his car in the driveway, the door opening, his footsteps inside. I stayed in the living room. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure what he'd find. When he saw me, he stopped. Amy. I didn't let him finish. I froze the account. He nodded once, like he expected that. I talked to a lawyer. Another nod. Silence stretched between us. Then he said, we can figure this out. That almost made me laugh. Figure out what? I asked. Which life you're keeping? His expression shifted slightly. It's not that simple. It is to me. He took a step closer. I didn't plan for this to happen. You planned all of it, I said. Every trip. Every story. Every version of yourself. That's not the same thing. It is now. He stopped moving. For the first time, he didn't have an answer ready. That's when I knew something had finally reached him. Not enough to undo anything. But enough that he understood this wasn't something he could manage. You're not stopping, I said. He didn't answer. You're still going to see them. Silence. That's your answer. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he might finally say something real. Something honest. Something that sounded like regret. But all he said was, they need me. And that was it. That was the moment everything ended. Not when I saw him at the cemetery. Not when he told me about the lies. Not even when he admitted the kids. It was that sentence. Because it told me exactly where I stood. Not chosen. Not prioritized. Just, separate. Another life he stepped into when it was convenient. I nodded once. Then go, I said. He didn't move. Go, I repeated. And this time, he did. He walked out of the house like he was leaving for another trip. Calm. Measured. Controlled. Just like always. The divorce moved faster than I expected. There wasn't much to argue about once everything came out. Accounts. Assets. Property. All of it split cleanly. The hardest part wasn't the legal side. It was explaining it. To friends. To family. To people who kept asking, what happened? Because how do you explain this without sounding like you're telling a story that doesn't exist in real life? I stopped trying. I just said, he wasn't who I thought he was. That was enough. Weeks passed. Then months. I stayed in Newton. Changed small things first. Moved furniture. Repainted the bedroom. Got rid of anything that felt like it belonged to a version of my life that wasn't real anymore. Kelly checked in constantly. Sometimes we talked about it. Sometimes we didn't. That helped more than anything. And Jeff? As far as I know, he never stopped. I heard things. Not directly from him. Through people. Through quiet conversations that didn't say his name but didn't have to. He was still traveling. Still showing up. Still becoming whatever those people needed him to be. And part of me stopped trying to understand it. Because I already had the answer. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He chose that life. Every part of it. Sometimes I think about Megan. About Sarah. About the kids. About what happens when the truth finally reaches them the way it reached me. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just slowly. Through small details that don't add up. Through moments that feel off. Through questions that don't have clean answers. And I wonder which part will break them first. The lies. Or the fact that, for a while, it all felt real. Because that's the part one still can't fully let go of. What we had felt real. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. Comfortable. Safe. And now I don't know if any of it actually existed the way I thought it did. Or if I was just another version of something he created. Another role he stayed in long enough to make it believable. So I guess this is what I'm left with. Not confusion. Not even anger anymore. Just a question I can't fully answer. Was this just cheating? Or was I married to someone who never had a single real life at all?